Hey guys, Alex here from Homeschool of Bel Air. On today's video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about comb binding. If you're interested in finding out more about what system I use, stay tuned. Okay guys, so this is a pretty well requested video and I just haven't had a chance to make it. And I was about to put together some little dictionaries for the boys and I decided to, what better time to put this video together than now. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the comb binding machine, the different systems that you can probably find, and pretty much some of the tools that you might need when having a comb binding machine, along with the different sizes and styles of comb binding. Then I'm also going to walk you guys through me actually comb binding these dictionaries for the boys. Okay guys, so this is the comb binding machine that I own. This is and I hope you guys can see it, it is a MARIGOLD Uni10. I'm assuming that's the model number. This particular unit is a 19 hole punch. There are some that are 21 hole. What I would say is a 19 hole punch would be the regular size of a regular piece of paper. I'm going to show you guys real quick an example, and then there are some that are 21 hole punch. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't use it with a regular piece of paper. It just means that you have 2 extra holes in case you stick in a paper that's maybe the size of a construction piece of paper. I'll go more into that in a second. My particular model has different settings here for the different lengths of paper. You can move this depending on the size of paper. And let me show you guys the back. I ended up keeping the lengths for the margins. This is the dial for the margins. It moves this little lever here, and that tells you how thick the margin's gonna be at the edge of the paper. The less amount of sheets per booklet, you want the margin to be set at a smaller margin, where if you have a pretty thick booklet, I would say like, let's say 90 pages to about 200, you want the margin set to about 5 millimeters. And I'll go a little bit more with that and I'll show you guys examples once I can get a piece of paper here. This is a sheet of paper that came with the machine. It gives you your number of pages and the number of the comb size that you want for that said amount of pages. It also gives you the margin depth. So let me show you guys up close real quick. So that was part of the instructions. I ended up taping it on the back of the machine just so I could have it on hand pretty much at all times. So let me turn it to the side now. On the side here, there's a little drawer, and this is where you catch all of the trash from your clippings. This is something that you want to keep clean and empty out pretty much every time you use it. Like right now, it is definitely due for a clean out. So once it's cleaned out, you want to go ahead and slide it right back in. So real quick, I'm going to show you guys the different sizes of combs that you can usually find. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go over combs. So this is the smallest ones. This is for pretty much anything from pretty much 5 pages to about 20 pages. Then you have slightly bigger one. I don't know in diameter what this is. What is it, 10 millimeter? 10 millimeter. And these are part of the Fellows brand. And these would fit, and I wrote it on the side, this would fit 40 to 60 pages. And then I have the slightly larger one, which is this one here. And that one fits 60 to 100 pages, and it is the 12 millimeter. And then from there, I don't know the dimensions on these because I got rid of the boxes, but there's this large one, which I believe is 90 to 100, I believe it's 90 to 120 pages. It could be more for one of these, but then you also have the larger ones. These large ones handle 150 to 200 pages. This one I don't have very many of because I don't tend to make booklets this thick. So now I'm going to show you guys a few different styles and booklets. So for instance, some of the smaller ones are about 20 pages. This is a 20-page comb bound book that I have for the boys. One of the things that I do like about these combs is that they're reusable. So once, like for instance, this booklet is done, So what I can do is I could actually pop all of these little prongs out, and I usually like to do it very gently and just pop out one by one using my finger to guide it out. I can easily pull them out and stick it inside the box and just reuse it for another time. That's another reason why I like the combs. You can definitely reuse them. I know for spiral binding you could also reuse the spirals. You can just unwind them all. So I like the fact that these are reusable. Again, this is one of the 20-page ones. This is a little bit of the thicker one. I can't remember how many pages this one is, but that's what it would look like there. This is on a math spectrum notebook. So when it comes to workbooks, that's where you're gonna need the paper cutter. The paper cutter, you can use any style. The one that I have was one that I purchased off of a teacher that was retiring, so it's pretty heavy duty. But you can find these pretty easily at any office supply store, or the one that I had before was from Walmart, and it was just, I believe, like $15. So when it comes to doing a workbook like this, especially like this one, it has the glue binding. All you really want to do is tear out all the pages very gently, and then a few pages at a time, you want to take them to your paper cutter and just very gently and very thin, you want to slice off the layer of the glue, and then you can just pass it through your comb binding machine and go ahead and comb bind, and there you have an easier to use workbook. So that's one thing you can do with the comb binding machine as well. Another thing that I like to do is I sometimes like to comb bind on the top of the page rather than the side. For something like this, all you really have to do is take your scissors and cut off the extra 2 prongs that are left over. So for something like this one, it was one of these, for instance. So again, all you would have, oh, it's 4 of them. Sorry, I thought it was 2. So all you really have to do is once, and I usually like to do it first, I actually bind the book first. And as soon as I have the book bound, then I go ahead and take my scissors and cut off the excess. Again, this is something that you can save. Just because it's cut doesn't mean you can't save it. You can definitely save it. There's a few different types of booklets that I prefer to bind at the top. Something like this one, where I just preferred it to be on the top rather than on the side. Sometimes I just prefer it, especially for younger kids. I feel like it keeps the binding really just away from the kids' hands. This booklet, not so much, because most of the pages are portrait style. But for the most part, something like this is just easier to have this away from the side here. So yeah, there's certain circumstances where I prefer to have the binding at the top rather than the side. And then this would be the big one. So this is the biggest one. I forgot how many pages the Big Life Journal is, but it holds it up pretty well, as you guys can see. And I haven't had any issues with this, considering how thick this book is. So now I'm going to show you guys real quick the measurements and the different sizes. So I'm bringing this little guy over, and it's really heavy, guys. So the way that you use the comb binding machine. Okay, so I'm going to start with a regular size piece of paper. If you're going to use a regular size piece of paper, which is an 8.5 by 11, the measurement here, when it comes to this little dial, you want it to be all the way to the side. And that gives you a, that is a perfect measurement for a 11-inch paper, to ensure that every hole punch from 1 to 19 is going to be pretty much from one end to the other end, and there's not going to be anything sticking out. So when you stick it in, you stick it pretty much to where it stops. The margin is set, so it's set to stop. Depending on the amount of papers, I'm going to show you guys a 2 millimeter. So I'm going to move the dial. I'm going to go ahead and move the dial to in the back, and I'm going to set it to 2 millimeters. So like that, you guys can see the difference. So that is set to 2 millimeters for the margin. So I'm going to go ahead and push my paper in. I'm not going to force it. Pretty much as soon as it stops, that is where the margin is set. So all you have to do is, see this little handle, is all you have to do is pull it down. Once you pull it down, that made the hole punch. And there you have your holes. So it is as simple as that. So that is a 2 millimeter. I'm going to show you guys the 5. I don't think I'm gonna show you the ones in between, but I'll show you guys the 5. So all I have to do is move the dial, and the little bracket in the back has numbers. So that is as far as it goes. It's a 5mm. So again, I'm gonna shove the paper in until it stops. So right there it stops. And again, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull the lever down. And that is your 5mm, so you guys can see the difference in how far in the margin is. I don't tend to use this one as much as the 2 and the 4. I tend to stay between 2 and 4 because I do feel like this is just really far in, and a lot of times you don't really need it that far in. At least I've never had an issue with it being this close to the margin. So that is when it comes to 11 by 8.5, that is how the margins would look. So now let me show you guys if you were to punch it on the top. Now for the top, you want to set it a little bit differently. So that is, I'm gonna move the back margin again to the 2. Oh, and sorry guys, this is 8. I don't know why I thought that was 5. That is 8. I did think that was kind of thick of a margin, but yeah, this is an 8 setting, which is the furthest it goes. There is an in-between size that I sometimes use, which is 4 and a 5. So here you have a 2, and then here you have an 8. So the 4 and the 5 would be a little bit in between there. So sorry about that, guys. Okay, so I took it back to a number 2 margin. And now what I like to do is I like to measure the piece of paper, because a lot of times I'm going to try to move up closer so you guys can see. And it's going to be hard to see, guys. But there's a little area where it shows you where all the holes are when it comes to punching it in. Let me see if I could... Oh, that's as far as I go. Sorry. Okay, so these are the imprints as to where the holes are. So what I like to do when I punch at the top, because it's 8.5, is I like to try to measure it so that there's no hole that ends up right at the edge. So I try to measure it, mine does have a little setting. It has the little lines. They're kind of hard to see, but there's lines here for measuring. So all I do is I set the paper right at that line that tells me where to stick it, which is, and it doesn't, I can't really see, but it would be the setting for a A4 page, or you know how they have different settings. So you have letter, and then you have A5 and A4. You want to set it at the A4 line, which is right there. So I'm just going to hold my piece of paper there, and then I'm going to go ahead and move this little black dial over. And I'm going to try to be gentle. It's kind of tough to move because it needs to be tough, so you're not moving it with the piece of paper. So now that I moved it over to the A4 page, and I'm really hoping that makes sense. Those are the settings that are here. So again, one is a letter size, one is A5, and one is A4. So on my comb binding machine, I set it to the A4 setting. So I'm going to go ahead and push my piece of paper in, bring down the dial, and there, as you guys can see, the hole doesn't end up on the edge of the line, and then you have it all the way to the other side. So then if I need to comb bind it from the top, I'm not going to have a hole that sticks out of the piece of paper. So that is normally how I use it. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to set up the boys' little dictionaries so you guys can see how I hole punch it, and then how I set up the combs using these little brackets up here. So before you start to comb bind, you always want to make sure that the settings are correct. I'm going to be comb binding a regular 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. So I want to make sure that the little bracket here is moved all the way to letter size. And I also want to make sure that the margin is set to about 2. Again, you can go by the diagram here. I usually just have a preference with the number 2. Between the 2 and the 3 are my favorites. Right now I have it, actually I think I have it at a 3. So I set the margin at a 3. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the cover. I always like to do the cover by itself. A lot of times I print the covers out on cardstock, or I have it laminated, and just to ensure that they don't get stuck. or that I don't mess up my comb binding machine, this can punch up to 10 sheets at a time, but I don't like to add too much force to it. So and this page isn't laminated, but usually I do laminate them. But again, if I do or I don't, I usually just like to do it by itself. So there's the first cover page. Now, when it comes to the actual sheets, I'm gonna go ahead and do a couple pages at a time. Even though it says I can do 10 at a time, I generally like to keep it between 5 and about 7 pages at a time, just to make sure that, again, I'm not forcing the machine too much. And there's the back cover. So now once I have the booklet complete, I like to stack the pages and make sure that all the hole punches are exactly aligned. And now it's time to go ahead and add the comb. Okay, so now the task is trying to figure out what size of comb we're gonna need for this booklet. This booklet is pretty much the alphabet, so it's about 26 pages. Give or take. So for 20 pages, I can use the 5mm comb size, or I can use the next one up, which is 8 to 6mm, which is 30 to 50 pages. I like for my booklets to have, for the comb to have a little bit of slack, so I usually go for the size up. So instead of using, I can probably use the smallest size, but I'm gonna go ahead and go for the next size up, which is gonna be the, for mine is gonna be the 10mm, which is definitely a lot bigger than I would probably need, but again, I like the slack. So now let me show you guys how to insert this. So to add the comb, you wanna stick the little plastic comb with the opening on the back side. So this would be the front side, and then the back side would be the opening of the comb. So you wanna just kind of add it into these little brackets here. And you want to make sure that they insert the backing. So the backing is in the back here, and all the little combs or all the little hoops are right here in the front. There's a little piece of metal that grabs a hold of the little ring and it pops it open. And I'll show you guys that right now. So this is the comb. This is the opening. The opening is going to be on the top part, and you want to just go ahead and stick them. So there is a metal piece in between each and every one of the rings. And obviously you want the opening to be up top. Oops. You want the opening to be at the top. So now what you want to do is you want to pull the lever, and you want to pull the lever this time instead of forward, because the forward does the hole punching, backwards opens up the metal piece. So as you guys can see, it moves these metal brackets forward and it opens up the rings. So here's a different angle. I'm gonna go ahead and push this back and it opens it up. So now when you add the pages, you want the comb bind or the opening to be on the back of your booklet. So you're gonna enter in your pages upside down like this. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the cover first and just kind of insert it. Make sure that every little ring is going inside one of the holes, and then just lay it down. Now you can go ahead and start adding your pages by a few stacks at a time. With a booklet this big, it shouldn't take you that long. Again, I'm making sure the pages are upside down, facing forward. Make sure that every ring is inside one of the holes and pushing it through. And I was actually able to do it in just 2. So again, make sure they're all in and push them through, and then back cover. Once this is done, all you want to do is release the lever, bring it forward. And there you have it. So I also wanted to add a quick little tip. Anytime one of the combs pops out, and it has happened, and it probably most likely will happen, I want to share with you guys a quick little tip that I discovered. So you don't have to pop all the rings out and put them through the machine again. All you really need is a paper clip. What you want to do is you want to open up a paper clip, and this is a paper clip that I tend to use for that. One of the things that you want to do is you want to go ahead and pop your paper clip in to the holes, making sure that you have every single page. You want to open up that comb and then use the paper clip as your guide to pass that comb right back through. And I just kind of use that paper clip to kind of guide in that plastic comb. I use the paper clip to guide it. See, now it's popped out. I use the paper clip to guide it out, and now I can pop it all the way through, and there you have a fixed little comb. So it's not something, again, that you have to pop the whole thing out to recomb it. You can just use a simple paper clip and just pass it right through. So that was a quick little tip. All right, guys, so that is all about my comb binding machine. If you guys have questions about anything, feel free and leave them in the comment box. I hope this helped answer a few questions that you guys have been having. If not, please feel free and leave me any other questions that you might have about this particular comb binding machine. I'm gonna go ahead and link this comb binding machine on the description box. I'm also gonna link some of the combs on the description box so you guys know where to go. The other thing I'm gonna add a link to is I have recently started a Teacher Pay Teachers account. You guys ask me a lot for different printables that I sometimes use in my homeschool room. These dictionaries here that you guys see in front of you are two of the things that I'm actually selling on my TPT store. I also have a few free things. Feel free and check it out. I'm gonna link that in the description box. And just so you guys know, my Teacher Pay Teachers account is called Homeschool of Bel Air. So for now, thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.